Testing, testing. 1, 2. Looks good. Um, it's March 11th in the early morning. Uh, about a little bit less than 12 hours ago. Ranks dropped for season B2a, Paldean Wonders. And I went from Ultra Ball 3 to Master Ball all at once. And the reason I did that is that it's Capcom Cup, and I was watching it, and I was idly playing this while I was watching Capcom Cup. Did anyone else see Xiaohai versus Blaz? I think it was. That was like a crazy set on day one during the group stage. It was great, one of the all-time best. Anyway, um, it was a little faster for me this time than last time. I don't know how many games it was because I'm a little stupid and I didn't wait long enough to make this video. So, I'll update. I'll put in the comments or something like that what my actual win rate was once I know. But in my last 30 games, which is as far back as I can see, I had 17 wins, 13 losses, which is, to be honest, pretty even. I did a little better than I did last time, but still nowhere near as well as I was doing in the beginning. I think more people had good decks since ranked is starting later, and because you can trade cards from the current set. So almost everyone I ran into was using top meta decks. But then again, I was going through Master Ultra Ball 4 and stuff, so the kinds of people that could even make it up there. Well, I don't know actually, because most of them were probably starting from there from last season. Anyway, yeah, rank starts after everyone's already got a bunch of cards. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm yawning. It's 7 a.m. And I was up all night watching Capcom Cup. Anyway, I did a meta reflection video last time, and I thought it would be kind of fun to do it this time too. Um, I got a couple things I want to talk about. Uh, oh, where do I even begin? Oh, I should look at my decks. That would be a good start. I'll show the decks I want to. What are these? It's organized by rarity. Um, I originally planned to use this Gorgeist Altaria deck, but I actually didn't run it at all. I don't even remember if it's different from the deck I ran last time. I was going to use this as like a fallback if things were kind of going south, but things never went that south. I kind of wanted to power through with the decks I was using. I think the only difference between this deck and the deck I used last season is that I now have the rare version of Copycat and Lycia, thanks to a little bit of in-game trading. Well, the Copycat I bought with pack points, but the Lycia I traded for. It's still a good deck. I ran into it a bunch while I was playing ranked, so it can't be bad, right? But I'm not going to talk about that one that much. What else? I'll look at the ones I actually used last. Here's a Chandelier Meowth. I don't really think this was super meta. I did run into it. It is a deck that people are using. I also ran into a Houndstone version. So both of these are viable decks. Houndstone or Chandelier does more damage with every supporter you discard, but obviously most of the time you can only discard a single supporter every turn. So your goal is to just survive as long as possible in the deck full of supporters, and your little piece of the puzzle to allow yourself to do that is the Meowth with the carefree steps. This thing can actually survive quite well if it's lucky, and especially if you happen to draw two of them. I didn't play this deck at all either, but just remember that it exists. Then I made an Absol Darkrai deck. This one is probably not super meta, but I saw it and I was like, oh, Absol Darkrai? I think Hydreigon is the good dark card. I think Darkrai is a little sus, and I think Absol is a little sus. I'm surprised people use Absol as much as they do. I know you need some other thing besides just Hydreigon, and Absol is the best other thing you can put on there. But Absol is almost always the weak link I find in dark decks. It rarely does it do anything good. It's a liability probably much more often overall than it's a feature. It's kind of strong for 2 energies. It's not that strong. And then, if it gets wounded at all, it's Cyrus bait for the rest of the game. I do like the protective poncho to kind of prevent things on the bench from being hit, such as your Pichus or your, what do you call it, Absols, I guess. It makes it harder to force Oricorio out, and then the Pichus can allow the Oricorios to attack or whatever. I didn't use this deck, so I don't know how good it is. That yawn I muted. And then I found this other one, Galvantula Greninja, which is pretty funny. Galvantula is, 70 damage and a coin flip for Para, I think. No, it's just a um, guaranteed paralysis. And then you have this Dunsparce too. Flip a coin if it's paralyzed. Is this the right version of the deck? Oh, the wills also work for the Joltix. It's just a paralysis spam deck. Apparently it's decent. I didn't run it either, but I saw it online and it was doing okay numbers in events, so I was like, that's really cool. That's a really cool no EX deck. Anyway, the decks I actually used, I'm getting way sidetracked. I just want to show off the decks so I can kind of, for my own reference later on, so I can look at them. The actual decks that I used, in the beginning I used this, and I went up and down continuously from um, Ultra Ball 3. I like stayed perfectly at Ultra Ball 3. I would like win a few, lose a few, win a few, lose a few, but I was losing slightly more than I was winning, so I was staying exactly at Ultra Ball 3. I went down to 2 like a gazillion times. I never got more than like 30 points into 3. I think it is a meta. It's a good enough deck, and you can win with it. You've got 2 of the Magnezone line, single Oricorio, which is weirdly all that you need, and then 1 Belly Bolt. I think that 2 Belly Bolt is probably the way. Leady Belly Bolt is not as good as late game Belly Bolt, but it's still kind of good. It's kind of is. It just depends on how quickly you can get more energies on the bench, which this not only has Lycia to get the Magnemites quickly, but it also has Clement to get the Magnetons quickly. So you usually get energies on the field pretty fast in this deck. I think probably more Belly Bolts is good, but there are versions of this deck floating around right now with both 1 and 2 Belly Bolts. And then also there's other permutations of this deck using things that aren't Magnezone, such as Zeraora or Raikou is actually one I ran into. Or just more or Corios and more Belly Bolts, stuff like that. A lot of different variations. Um, this deck was okay. The Lycia is kind of awkward because it only draws the Magnemites. So if you have a Magnemite, the Lycia can only draw 1 card. And uh, it only has, what, 4 basics in it, which is a super small number, especially because you only have 1 Pokeball. So I did lose some games because I just couldn't get anything on the bench. It was kind of frustrating, but you do have both the Copycat and the Lycia for early game draws. And then the Mesagoza is kind of interesting to get your draws as fast as possible. But that one's very double-edged because your opponent draws a lot too, and if they're running Altaria, they're probably benefiting more from the draws than you are. It wasn't really that... An annoying thing about this deck is that it wasn't really that strong going first or second. Because if you go second, you put your turn energy on Magnemite on turn 2, and you attack, and that's fine. But then on turn 4, you evolve to Magneton, and you've got 1 energy, and then with your turn energy and the Magneton's energy, it goes to 3. And that's not enough for the Magneton to attack. So having your Magneton as like a lead attacker isn't very good. And then Oricorio is fine as a lead if the opponent can't break it, but if they can break it, it's useless. And then Tadbulb, you weren't leading with it all that often. So like the best case scenario was like leading with Oricorio and then having benched Magnemite. Or like just leading with a Magnemite and having a benched other Magnemite, just so that you could get that. And oftentimes I wasn't able to get both Magnezones up because one of the Magnemites would die early because of that. What else happened? Oh, it's not strong going first either because, again, like even if you get the early evolution, Magneton just can't attack forever. Once you actually get the zones up, it's quite decent. I think in all the games I played with it, I played probably like 15, 20 games with it. And I think I only got Belly Bolt up like a few times total, and that's partially because I only ran the 1, but often just because my losses would be so fast. Hydreigon was really common, and Oricorio is useless against that. My very first match with this deck was against a guy using Mankey, and he played Mankey turn 1 with a double bench Riolu, and then on turn 3 he got the Rare Candy Annihilate, and I only had a Magnemite out. So I just got flattened instantly. It was like, holy shit. And that was my first game with the deck. I was like, is this deck for me? But I stuck through it for a little bit, but I couldn't get it to work. Altaria decks get hard-walled by the Oricorio. A lot of people aren't running the Gorgeist version, so like you just stick the Oricorio out, and the only thing they have to hit it is chip damage from Greninja, which is pretty bad. So you could start getting some pot shots on Altarias or whatever, or just kill things with the Oricorio until your Belly Bolt was set up. It was able to beat like top meta decks. I just wasn't able to win with any sort of consistency. Um, I think in all the time I was playing this, I ran into I think two water decks, and the whole point is that everyone's running water. I thought like there's much more results of. It's more. I can't stop yawning. I'm so sorry. There's much more of a number of people playing water on like Limitless and stuff than like any other type because of Baxcalibur is kind of the breakout card of this set, and also Qian Pao. So I ran this expecting to run into that, and it's a good matchup. This deck does beat that deck, but it's only kind of good. Like the water deck can win. It's not a super one-sided matchup, though it is definitely better for the lightning deck. But because I didn't run into anyone running water, I was just like, I'm free to run water. I can use water if no one's running water. That's not right. It was both. I ran into two people total using electric and like two people total using water. So I was like, there's no threat to a water deck, and like there's room for a water deck, so I'm gonna play a water deck. That was it. Anyway, I just had no real success with this one. I was just running into Altari and Dragon as usual, and occasionally like other random things, like the Annihilate, and then a couple other just weird ones. For most of this, I ran a Suicune deck, which is it's been a little while since I've used Suicune. I try to use a different type every time I do this. Um, I got this card, Qian Pao, literally yesterday, and I was like, oh man, like, I want to use Qian Pao because I got the cool 2-star one. Um, and then I got the shiny Suicune a little while ago too, a few weeks ago. That's pretty nice. I was like, yeah, this is it. This is how I'm going to do it. Qian Pao Suicune. This is a deck I found from the internet. I didn't make it. Super small number of basics. I think 5. You got the one Qian Pao, the 2 Suicunes, and the 2 Frigibaxes or whatever they are. Or Arctobaxes. I think they're Frigibaxes. Yeah, they are. Um, this deck is pretty damn good. It's best if you go second, and it's best if you lead Suicune. Suicune allows you to draw extra energies in the early, or extra cards in the early game. And if you can get Baxcalibur up, you can attack with Suicune as early as turn 3, although I only had that happen a few times. And then uh, if you're going second, you just attack turn 4 in general. So it's like, pretty reasonable, fast attacking with Suicune. And then the Baxcaliburs, they can power up Suicunes. You can go from a non-invested, you can play a Suicune and then attack with it on the same turn, which was occasionally very helpful. And then, of course, they're here to kill Oricorio, although I think in total, I ran into a lot of Oricorios, and I think I only killed 1 or 2 with Baxcalibur. It just didn't, most of the time it didn't come out into play in time. It's funny because it theoretically sets up at the same speed as Hydreigon, but I just could not get games where I had early game Baxcalibur. Granted, this deck is not running like Copycat, and that's one of the main ways you can do it in other decks, is you can draw out stuff and then Copycat your hand to be big again. But because I'm using the dog draw engine, the Suicune, I was Copycat bait myself, I'm the kind of person you love to run into if you're running Copycat. The Qian Pao, okay, what do I even say here? The Baxcalibur did 90, and that was frequently very good. The Qian Pao does a 130 to any target. When Qian Pao was first revealed, a lot of people were kind of bashing on it. It was like 20 for 1 energy or 130 for 3 energies. The 20 occasionally did help me. Like in the early game, occasionally I would like get a hit on the opponent's lead Absol, and then I would be able to kind of hit it later. There's a very small number of basics in this deck. The fact that there's only 5 basics total, is actually super annoying when Suicune's damage goes up the more bench things there are. So there were frequently moments where I was only doing like 40 or 60 damage with my Suicune, which was really annoying. I'm so used to playing the Gren version of this where Gren can just get the chip damage and then offers the control with the Cyrus. And you still have control in this deck with the Qian Pao. And the Qian Pao control ended up being a lot more useful. I do have a 1 Cyrus, but the Qian Pao ended up being a lot more useful than the Cyrus was in order to get my benched kills. This deck did a lot better. It was really bad against Oricorio, and I started running into Lightning a lot more often as soon as I switched to this, which is really frustrating. or Choreo, the only ways around it are the Baxcalibur or killing things on the bench with Qian Pao, which is just not feasible most of the time because they just take a while to set up. Um, I think I for all of Ultra Ball 3, I didn't get a single like turn 3 Baxcalibur, and then I only got a few of them at the very end of Ultra Ball 4. Like if I led Baxcalibur, being able to attack with it kind of thing. I noticed that you could often lead with the Frigibax, and on turn 2, like put an energy on it and just retreat it to Suicune. And then the Suicune, because of the draw at the end of the turn, had a better chance to draw the rare candy and get the Baxcalibur going. And then if you got the Baxcalibur, you could play your turn 4 energy plus your, Baxcalibur energy at the same time. So, like, getting out of Frigibax early was often really strong. And just going into Suicune and soaking up the hits. I've ran different versions of this deck before. This one is very bulky. We've got both the starting plane and the cape. So the Suicune's HP goes from 140 to 180 if you got both of those in play. So it felt like a mega, but it was a mega that it was okay to lead with because I didn't lose if it died. And then the Chen Pao, it's only got 130 HP, but that went up to like 170 with the starting plane in the cape. And most people weren't running stadiums, so like I kind of oftentimes I could recognize the decks that had stadiums in them, and oftentimes I could just get up my stadium. Excuse me. Oftentimes I could just get up my stadium in the early game, and you just have it out for the entire game. I like learned to recognize when the opponent would have any kind of counterplay for it, i.e. their own stadium. Suicune was mostly useful for its draw effect. The health of the deck felt awesome. Um, the most annoying matchup was Oricorio, but also Chingling, the Chingling versions of Altaria, because Chingling blocks the rare candy, and I don't have a Arctivax to evolve into. And then also, the 10 damage from Chingling puts Suicune at the kill threshold for Altaria, which is really annoying. And then also not being able to play my Pokeballs kept my Suicune's weak, which was very annoying. Hydreigon felt okay. I did pretty well against Dark decks overall with this deck, I would say. If he got like super early Hydreigon with the turn 3 or 4 rare candy, it was bad. But even those were occasionally winnable. And then if the Dark battle lasted more than a few turns, I was gonna win, just straight up. Like if I got a Suicune set up and then like a Baxcalibur on the bench, and then like I was gonna draw my Chen Pao, I was gonna snipe the Absol, I was just gonna win. Like there's a certain point where if the game made it to like turn 12, I would win almost every time. The late game of this deck, because of all the HP and because of the sniping with the energy ramp, the late game of this deck is much stronger than Dark decks. Um, what else? I think that there was a little bit of fluff. The Guzma usually did nothing, but occasionally came in super clutch for removing like barbs and stuff. There were like games where I absolutely would have lost if not for Guzma, but then there were also games where um, it just didn't do anything. Most games, a lot of people just weren't running tools. Arita occasionally saved me, but generally wasn't that helpful. With the cape, with the field, with the Arita, I could get a surprising amount of HP back in one turn, but the energy balancing was kind of tricky to get the right things healed. Qianpao did end up being the MVP of the deck. The 130 damage was actually really, really critical because how often Suicune was not hitting 120 because of the low bench of both my opponent and myself. Like, obviously, I couldn't fill my bench very easily because I only have the 2 Pokeballs and the 5 basics. But my opponents were wiser to the counterplay of Suicune this late in the game's, this late in Suicune's existence. They know to, like, kind of deploy fewer slots. So Suicune was just frequently just hitting unimpressive numbers, 60 or 80, even in the late game. So Chen Pao's ability to just come in and do 130 was like very, very frequently helpful. And then it could kill like Indeedee on the bench in one shot. It could kill like other Qian Paos on the bench in one shot. The damage threshold was good enough. I thought it would be bad because you have to discard so much energy, and because um, 130 is just completely missing the mark on one touches. Like you don't kill any megas, and you don't even kill most EXs. but it ended up being like a super good late game cleaner. And you only need the one, and it only needs to come in the late game, which is why every version of this deck is just running the one Qian Pao. It's not good in the early game, but it is good in the late game. Um, I did miss the amount of control I had with the Cyrus and the Greninjas, though. The Greninja version of this deck is still fun to play, and I did run into it. I even ran into one with the Mega Granny X. It's not a Mega. I was mixing up in my head. I was like, "Is there a Mega Gran?" I didn't remember because of stupid ass Ash Gran. Um, what else? Let me think. Opponents did miss that I could retreat into Qian Pao and then like back some energy onto it and kill their 1 HP, 130 HP Altaria. They would like see that they wouldn't die to Suicune and they would just stop there. That happened several times. It was the clincher in a bunch of games. Qian Pao was almost always like the reason I won. It ended up being like so good. Um, okay, whatever. Let's talk about the decks I was fighting. I ran into a lot of Hydreigon, a lot of Suicune, a lot of Altaria. They all still feel really strong. Those were like the MVPs last set, and they still feel good now. There were a few decks that saw a lot of play, but I kind of flattened them whenever I ran into them. Like, let me think. Ogerpon, Kangaskhan, Psychic Brews with the Meloetta, or like the Mega Gardevoir, and then the water decks that were still running Indeedee. The Indeedee was just a liability. Getting one shot by Qian Pao was just brutal for it. Every time I saw Indeedee, I was like relieved to see it. I was like, oh yes. But I did run into one guy using Indeedee with Protected Poncho, and that's probably the way you have to do it these days. But even that I can Guzma. Oops, little cut there. A lot of the Altaria decks I saw are now running Meowth. Some Chandler decks are now running Meowth, and actually even Bellybolt I saw Meowth on it. It's a very good feeling card, I think, very underrated. And another thing I kept seeing was Palkia Misty. Like, with backs, there's a question you have to answer, which is what card becomes busted if you have a whole bunch of water energies in play. And the obvious answers are Qian Pao and Palkia are like the best cards if you can just put on a bunch of energies every turn. Um, so I ran into several people playing Palkia, which is a card I didn't really expect to ever see again. And Palkia can use its 150 damage every turn if you have two Bexes up, but I never saw someone do that. But I did have several people get like many heads of Misties on their Palkias, which is pretty annoying. I had like one guy get a two heads Misty, which was clutch to get in the early Dimensional Storm or whatever it's called, and then I had another guy who straight up got a 6 heads Misty on me. And just like cleaned my clock. I just lost instantly. He like played something in the front, and then played Palkia in the back, and then on turn 3 he played like Misty on the Palkia and got 6 heads, and then he just played his turn energy on the thing in front and switched into the Palkia, and then it's just like, this 6 heads Palkia is going to lose 3 energies hitting me for 150, and then next turn it's going to put on a new energy and lose 3 more energies hitting me, and I'm just going to take 150 twice. I'm just going to get owned. It was like the perfect amount of energy to get to completely like screw me up. Let me think. In terms of the new EX cards, I faced Meowscarada twice. I won one, I lost one. The first time, he had a benched Arboliva, or whatever that thing is called, healing it every turn, and I could not break it. Like, he had all this spare energy, because he only needed 2 for the Meowscarada, and he wasn't bothering to put energy on the Arboliva. So, he was getting, like, the Meowscarada was just getting a 60 HP heal every turn, which is pretty crazy. And I just completely failed to break the Meowscarada in time, in any kind of timeliness. The second game I had against one, I used Qian Pao's bench attack to just kill the Arboliva early, because it one-taps it. And I won pretty handily after that. I think the version of the deck that I ran into both times was only running a single Arboliva. I guess you don't really need more than one. And that one is good enough because of the Quick Grow Extract, allowing you to kind of draw its evolutions reliably. Both people I fought using the deck were just using two Meowscarada, one Arboliva, and nothing else. Which is pretty fun because they're all new cards. I ran into one Armor Rouge. I absolutely cleaned it. He never even got an attack off. But I was running water, so, like, what do you expect? I never saw his deck because I won so fast. But the one thing I saw besides the Armor Rouge was a Ogre Pawn or Hearth Flame, which is the one where you like flip a coin, and if you get heads, you attach 2 fire energies or something like that. It's a pretty cool pair actually, but it's probably not good at all. Shen Pao, one of the EXs, ended up being an absolute killer, as I said. Belly Bolt was both anti-meta to water and also an extremely good card in general, and it could be paired with Magnezone or Oricorio or that one Raikou one I saw, probably other things too. I didn't run into Golden Go. Is that the last of them? I think that's the last of them. For the non-EX cards, I didn't run into Skeledirge. I didn't run into Quaquaval. I didn't run into Palmot. I did see Annihilate, and I did see Houndstone. Is there any other like notable like non-EX? I think that's all of them. I can't think of another one. I feel like it's probably like a Psychic or Dark one I'm not thinking of. I ran into 2 Grass decks total. I ran into 3 Fire decks, 2 Fighting decks, so I was keeping tally. I ran into no Metal decks at all, no Dragon decks at all. Almost everyone was playing Water, Lightning, Psychic, and Dark. And in those decks, it was the usual suspects. Greninja was actually more popular outside of Water than on it. You saw Greninja a lot on Altaria decks and Dark decks, actually. But I didn't see Gran on Water decks almost at all. Psychic was mostly using Altaria with Pumpkaboo or Greninja. And Dark, I actually ran into a decent number of people running Darkrai, but I didn't really lose to that. If I lost to Dark, it was almost always Hydreigon, but I beat almost every Dark I ran into, if I'm being honest. One kind of interesting thing I noticed is that the control cards are a lot less common. The switching cards, the Sabrina and Cyrus. And then also Chingling. A lot of people were running Chingling before, and now it's only on the Altaria decks as like a free retreat plus, like, control thing. You want to have a lot of basics in Altaria decks so you can fill up the bench easily. But fewer people were using... I think most decks were using 1 Cyrus and no Sabrina. From the way, like, very rarely was a game decided by a Cyrus for me. People used to run 2 Cyrus or 1 Cyrus, 1 Sabrina. And now it feels like people weren't doing that. So the end games were kind of more calculable. They're more pure. There are a lot of really good items and supporters now. Plus, like, decent draw engines. That you're actually, like, a lot of decks are just running one of everything. Instead of, like, running multiples. Overall, I would say the game felt less random than last season. It was still a tough climb, but it felt like most games were like more fair. It was less like even I don't know if it's power creep or what, but even in the games where like early Hydreigon happened or early Altaria happened, I didn't just lose outright. I was often able to kind of like bounce back from it. Maybe it's just because the deck I'm running has just really high HP basics. That's about my general impressions with the meta. I think I don't really have a whole lot else to say. I did have some funny games, if you want to stick around and listen to me yap about the games I had. I had one guy who had lead Zeraora, and he benched Zeraora and Tadbulb on his first turn. And then on his first turn, he played 2 gold rare electric generators, and he got heads on both of them. And one of them he put on the Tadbulb, the other he put on the Zeraora, I think. And then on turn 3, he had 1 card left in his hand, and he played it, and it was Belly Bolt. And he attached his energy to the Belly Bolt and then, like, retreated the Zeraora that was already out in the active spot. And he had exactly 4 energies in play. He had, like, 2 on his bench Zeraora and 2 on his bench Belly Bolt, which was now his active Belly Bolt. So on turn 3, he was doing 140 damage to me. And he killed me from full health with my, like, Suicune or whatever it was. And I was just in awe because he needed... In his opening, like, 7 cards that he had by turn 3... He needed both Oricorios and the Tadbulb and the 2 item cards, the electric generators, and the 1 specific evolution. So he needed 6 specific cards in a hand of 7, and he got all of them. And then he also got double heads on the 2 electric generators, and the 2 generators he had were gold rares. And I was just like, God damn, like I just met a really lucky guy. It was a very, very unlikely fast win on the deck. Like, Belly Bolt is fast, but it's not usually that fast. I did have a game where I threw, and it hurt a lot. I saw my Suicune had 160 HP, the lead Suicune, And I was like, oh, that's fine. It already has a cape. So the cape in my hand that I was about to attach, I put it on one of my bench Suicune. But my Suicune didn't have 160 HP because of a cape. It had it because of the training field. Or no, it's starting plane. And on my opponent's turn, he played the training dojo or whatever it's called, training field, and that removed my starting field. Is it training dojo and starting field? He played training dojo, which removed my starting field, and that lowered my HP from 160 to 140, and it raised his Altaria's damage from 130 to 140. So there was like a 50 damage, I mean a 30 damage difference between what I thought his kill threshold was and how much I thought I had. But then he just like by switching the stadium, he made up that 30 damage all in one go, and he killed me on the spot, and that was the last point he needed to win. And it hurt because of how avoidable it was, because I had the cape and I could have just played it on the thing that was out. Um, my last game before I ranked up, my opponent got crazy unlucky and like failed to draw Altaria or Gren until his last few cards. But I kept failing to draw cards too. I didn't get any of my researches, and he kept on getting heads on his Swablu Sing, so I kept on staying asleep. And there were like several turns where if I just woke up, I would have been able to kill the Swablu in one hit. But I just kept sleeping on the clutch moments. And I could have just won several times if I was, lucky and I got the heads. And the game went super long. And at the very end, I had this super clutch moment where I only had 5 cards left in my deck, and I had 2 points, and he had 2 points. And all the things on my field were like full HP. It was his turn. He attacked my Chen Pao with his Altaria and took it from like 150 to 100. He didn't have a full bench. I mean 150 to 50. And I had one Baxcalibur on the bench, and I also had one Frigibax. And I had the Rare Candy in hand, but I didn't have the other Baxcalibur. And my Chen Pao, which was my active, had no energy. So I needed, in order to kill his last bench Mon, he had like a Froakie on the bench. In order to get my third point, kill his last Mon, I needed to draw my Baxcalibur. I had 5 cards left in my deck, and 2 of them were my research. I didn't draw either of my researches, and then 1 was the Baxcalibur, and 2 were just random things, the Arita or whatever. And it was just like, oh man, like it's like a 3 out of, it's a little bit higher than 3 out of 5 to get it. Obviously, it's like a 1 out of 5 to get it if I get the Baxcalibur, and then like either of the researches gives me a very high chance of getting the Baxcalibur. I guess there's 2 cards left over, right? In both of those, so it's like a 3/5 chance if I draw the. Oh, it's complicated. I don't know math. I think it's a little less than 3/5 chance overall. Anyway, I got research into backs, and that allowed me to full charge my Chen Pao in one turn. It went from 0 energies to 3, and then I killed his bench Froakie, and I got the win. It was like super clutch. I took some screenshots and posted them on social media. Overall, it was pretty fun. I didn't take as long with it, so I don't have as much to say as last time. It was less cancerous than last time, but that might have just been chance. And I did kind of like, it was a little cancerous right at the beginning. Once I was playing water, it was pretty fun. But when I was playing lightning, it was not so fun. I think lightning is viable, though, based on the lightning ticks I was running into. But lightning is kind of falsely elevated by how strong water is, I think. Because a lot of people are just running lightning because of how strong water is. But Belly Bolt is still good. You'll have to look up the matchups yourself if you want to know. I don't know. Thanks for listening.